Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Ukrainian talk show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and today guests we have Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be back.
Also, who will join us is founder of the network, Nick Paliveda. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Barely here.
That's great to have you. And if anybody will join us, please let me know if somebody will, because I send more links, but we'll see. So, Jonathan, what's your opinion? Is this exchange of prisoners or spies or whoever they are, or some bandits, whoever they are, is this something could affect the situation of possible peace between Ukraine and Russia?
To be brief, no. It is a pure propaganda move on Putin's part, and trying to gain favor. He's tried to have it both ways. In effect, in advance, Mr. Putin is anticipating in advance of the November election the possibility, not more. It's a lot greater than zero that former President Trump will be reelected to a second term over his current opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, which is there's an awful lot that can happen to sharply move the election needle in favor of either candidate between now and the November election. Most emphatically, for example, if there are more than one or two debates that take place between now and then. And so Mr. Putin is playing it both ways by giving he actually got the better of the deal. He got back people that he wanted to get back in exchange for prisoners that were important obviously to the families of those Americans who were imprisoned in Russia, but in terms of strategic value, or if you want to think of it in terms of chess pieces, Putin got back more valuable chess pieces in exchange for.
Absolutely. If you will compare, Jonathan, people who were released from Russia and who they are and what they are, and people who Putin got back, they are bandits and criminals, and there is not
his kind of people.
One normal person.
His kind of people. So,
that's kind of
and more. He got more back, in his opinion, more valuable chess pieces that he could use at a future date. So, in terms of how that's going to affect the war in Russia versus Ukraine, no, it is not going to be. It is irrelevant in that sense. But
hold on one moment. That I've heard is that Putin wanted to prove that he is a person that you can deal with, that who is trustworthy, that who went all the way during these negotiations from beginning to the end, and he finished. Well, never mind. There is one detail that the Navalny, now deceased, of course, being killed. Navalny was at the beginning part of this swap. And when Putin realized that it will be very difficult, of course, there was no way that he would let Navalny go. So Putin wanted to make sure, so how you do it? You stop negotiations and kill the deal? He doesn't want to do it because he needed some of his friends back in Russia. So he says, okay, the easiest way is to say Navalny is no longer with us. So therefore, the deal now goes. But what you can do about Navalny? We can give you his core, his body, if you insist. But that's all what we can do. So this deal is, in a way, it's better that this deal happened than if it wouldn't happen. You may.
It's a net gain for those Americans who are the families of those Americans who are released. Obviously, this is wonderful on a personal level. On an international strategic level, basically we gave back more. We gave the Russians back more than we actually
much more. It reminds me. Remember a deal when this girl, basketball player, was released from Russia, and in exchange, you gave this Mr. Death, this notorious arms dealer, Remember, there was a movie about it. Nicholas
So,
Cage played the lead. So, yeah, that exchange is really something else. And okay, now we have Shaquille Latimer. Welcome to the show. So we just touch discussions on that release of how to say prisoners, hostages. I don't know what even else you can apply.
pawns and chess pieces.
Pawns and chess pieces, both in Russia and the United States, and not only in the United States. Some people were released from Germany. Some people, that famous Putin's friend, who killed on the street of Berlin, right in the middle of the day, he just killed one Putin's perceived enemy, and this is why Putin really wanted him back.
Now,
Because
I'll let you have a rook back in exchange for a pawn if my pawn is on G7 and has nothing in front of it. Right. So,
Pass pawn. Yeah,
but-
pass
but-
pawn. Yeah.
but this whole conversation about prisoner exchanges is about American exchanges. The countries that are going to suffer the most and be affected the most are Europe, and the rest of the world sits there and supports Europe. And we all sit there and go, "Oh, America, America, what do you want to do?" And with the greatest of respect to you, Dr. Lockwood, who cares what America wants to do? Maybe the rest of us should have a backbone and say, we're doing this. Okay, what's America going to do? Is America going to get upset and drop a nuclear bomb on Sydney Harbour? I don't think so. What are they going to go and attack London City? I don't think so. So I think perhaps the powerful countries in the Five Eyes nations and the powerful countries within Europe, mostly they are NATO countries, should maybe stand up and say, this is what we're doing. Stop trying to take the lead from the United States. The United States will fall into line. Okay, they fall into line on everything else. And, you know, what is happening between Russia and the Ukraine right now is unacceptable. And if America is not prepared to step up to the plate and do something about it that we think they should do, then we should step up to the plate and do it without the United States. Because as soon as we do, the United States will join us.
I agree on that because, after all, what former President Trump had been saying all along is that NATO nations should pay more of their fair share. Now,
Yep.
And that's perfectly logical. The original rationale, remember, for NATO, as some were observing at the time, the purpose of NATO originally was to keep the Russians out, the Americans in, and the Germans down. That was the underlying logic to ensure American involvement. But now you have to, because the strategic equation has changed in several ways, it is not as necessary for the United States to always be taking the lead in terms of the overall defense of NATO. And and what's going to be very key is, of course, in some respect, is the outcome of the November election. Now, it's a kind of a question mark if Kamala Harris wins the election. It's a question mark, really, as to what involvement or additional involvement is going to take place. Former President Trump has talked about how he will be able to end the war quickly, and that's also an open question because it's really dependent. What I am contending, and have been contending on several of the past shows, is that Ukraine still very much controls its own destiny, depending upon whether they are able to successfully execute a counteroffensive between now and the November election that severs the control of Crimea from Russia, isolates them effectively, which they are coming closer and closer to doing, based upon the pullback of Russian air forces from Ukrainian border, as well as the near virtual destruction of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, and other indications that are setting the stage for in my opinion, a successful Ukrainian counteroffensive that will effectively isolate the Crimea and cause Crimea to revert back to Ukrainian control. That is a key center of gravity in this whole conflict, which is some observers are increasingly beginning to recognize. So that is the key event that that I am looking for between now and the November election. Will the Ukrainians successfully throw the counterpunch that inflicts a decisive operational defeat upon Russia? Those are some are beginning. There's a lot
I totally understand where you're coming from, John. I will say I think that is pathetic on behalf of all the other countries.
Oh yes,
all the other
they
countries
were
that are
waiting for
involved.
Ukraine to. They're waiting for Ukraine.
No,
Rather than,
they're waiting for the United States to do something, right? How about having some backbone and doing it yourself? Like this is an atrocious situation, and why should the rest of the world be sitting there waiting for the political whims and fancies of the United States? But why shouldn't the rest of the world be standing up and saying, "Hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that"? It's like the Afghanistan withdrawal, okay? Absolute disaster. But if you watch the media, all the media says, even in Australia, even in the UK, all the media says is, oh, they left Americans behind. They left American humanitarian workers behind. Excuse me, what about the British humanitarian workers? What about the French humanitarian workers? What about the Australian humanitarian workers? Maybe these wealthy, powerful countries should stand up and say, actually, no, that's not okay with us. We're going to go and deal with it. And if the United States doesn't want to deal with it themselves and they want to go, you go, we're going to deal with it. Because very quickly, politically in your country, if you see the rest of the world doing something, you guys will very quickly fall in line. But for some bizarre reason, the rest of the world sits back and goes, oh, well, okay, what America wants to do, we won't do anything, or we will do something because America wants to. Who says America is so powerful? Why? Because you guys have been the world's police? Not on your own, you haven't. With the greatest respect for you, because I know you're military. With the greatest respect to America, you guys have never gone into a conflict on your own. You've always gone into a conflict with the support of allied forces. So maybe those allied forces should at some point say, hey, America, actually, this thing over here is not acceptable. And if I can just use one example, it's not completely relevant to the Ukraine-Russia situation. When you guys were in Iraq, Australian service people were fighting alongside of you. We banned the use of cluster bombs. It was brought up in our parliament that Australian service people were involved in the deployment of cluster bombs. And the question was, should they or shouldn't they be involved in that, given that we've banned it, but we were working alongside Americans? Okay, that was the debate. At what point is it okay for other countries to say, hey, America, your position is not one the rest of us agree with? At what point is it that it shouldn't matter what a US election says? It should matter what our elections say. It should matter what the rest of us say. And most notably and most importantly, Europe, because Europe is significantly more affected by the Russian-Ukrainian conflict than what the United States is. Those countries need to get a bit of a backbone and to stand up for what's right. And what is happening to the Ukrainian people is deplorable. And I believe that they have every right to be disgusted at the apathy of the European Union countries, but not doing enough and just sitting by and listening to what America has to say.
Okay, Shaquille, I would like to remind you one fact. After 9/11, United States, the only time since Second World War, they invoke Article 5. And it's not only U.S. sent forces to Afghanistan, later to Iraq, but NATO countries, and believe it or not, Ukraine. Ukraine sent its forces to Iraq, and some enforcement into Afghanistan, but mostly in Iraq. So it's kind of a situation that you have to a little bit to provide a clarity between the state of the affairs in after 9/11, which was still Potsdam architecture, which was created in 1945 after the end of Second World War, and it was all Western countries together. It's not, oh, US, you go first. Oh,
that's
UK,
my point.
maybe you should try.
That's my point exactly. That's exactly my point.
hold on, Shakil. What you're saying is that because the war between Russia and Ukraine is taking place in Europe, so therefore Europe should do more, and United States either will do less or do nothing whatsoever. So
No,
there
no, no, no,
is
no, Sasha, that's not. No, Sasha,
no.
that's not
Okay,
what I'm saying.
clarify, please.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying the US should do less. I'm not
Well,
saying they should do less. What I'm saying is that the US has not done enough,
okay,
okay,
it's a difference.
and that the European nations should do more. And if America doesn't want to do more, the European nations should do more regardless of what America says, because America will end up joining. What the European Union, what the European countries should not do is to allow the travesty which is occurring right now to continue to occur because they don't want to upset the Americans. Okay? America is one country. It's a powerful country. It's a country that is an ally of ours. We all love and adore the United States. But if the US is dropping the ball because of its internal political issues, the rest of us should stand up. I am horrified that big, powerful countries like Germany and France, and the UK for that matter, are sitting back waiting for the US to lead this. What is happening in the Ukraine should not be happening, and they need to step up and
I'm
do
so
something about
sorry
it.
to cut you, but what you're saying was maybe valid maybe a month or two ago. It's no longer valid today because all Europe, in anticipation of possible Trump's win in the November election, they understand that the foreign policy of United States can be at the best as unpredictable. Okay, nobody knows what Trump is going to do one way or another. So it is, let's put it this way, unpredictable. So what to do in this case while Ukrainian war is still there and no peaceful solution nowhere to be found, at least at this point, that's for sure. So Europe came with a decision quite recently, by the way, so maybe you are not aware of it, Shakil. They came to, first of all, creation of their own missiles. One is capable of hitting targets at 1,000 kilometers and another one 2,000 kilometers. So it's basically, you can classify them on medium range missiles, but very effective and can easily reach any point in Russia, including those in Moscow and St. Petersburg. Done deal. So this is being developed now. Now, on the other hand, I heard also that U.S. developed now supersonic missiles that can hit almost any target, and it will be. Well, it's also mid-range, mind you, and it will be delivered to Germany, and from Germany it can hit almost any target in Russia. Right, Jonathan?
That is correct.
Okay, so this way, Europe is now taking much more active approach because of the November election and other factors. And we discussed on Jonathan on one program when you were not available. We discussed, actually Shakil was on that program, and we discussed the role of Biden in Ukrainian war, whether he's done enough and whether he's a hero of Ukrainian war, or he's a villain who is not releasing funds, which were, by the way, even approved by the Congress. $61 billion were approved. And you know how much money of the $61 billion were used for Ukraine? 1.2 billion. So $60 billion are still sitting there, are not being used. And I'm not sure, are they going to expire by the end of September or October? Jonathan, what do you know about that?
Sorry, can I just say, sorry, John, if I could just jump in. Can I just say this, Sasha? I think we're slightly at cross purposes. I'm advocating for more support for the Ukraine.
Okay.
And what I'm suggesting is that extra support, whether it be money or whether it be military,
Or both.
should be made available, or both, should be made available to the Ukraine by the European nations, regardless of what happens in the United States.
And it's exactly what's happening.
It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter whether Biden or Harris or Trump or whoever wins American elections. Who cares? The European nations should take a stronger stance than what they are. What's happening in Ukraine should not be allowed to happen. And what I am simply saying is Europe should not be sitting back and waiting for America to make a decision. They should make a decision. America will fall into line, as opposed to sitting back and doing nothing or doing very little until the United States makes a
But
decision.
Shaquille, it's not the case at all. They're not sitting down. In all the 6 months that U.S. Was not sending any help to Ukraine, whether it's military or financial, who was helping Ukraine? How Ukraine did
You just said that 60 billion was committed. You
Hold
just said that 60 billion was committed and 1.5 billion was actually given.
Hold on, you're mixing up. The decision of Congress for $61 billion happened only at the end of April. So from October to April, U.S. has not helping Ukraine at all. It was European countries, specifically Poland and Baltic states and UK and even Germany and so on. They were helping to Ukraine, and that's how Ukraine has not lost by the end of
Sasha,
hold on now.
Sasha, I'm advocating for more support for the Ukraine by Europe.
You don't.
Regardless of how you let me finish my question. Regardless of how you feel about the United States, do you oppose me suggesting that Europe should do more?
I'm not suggesting for the United States anything because it all hinges on.
No. Are you opposing my comment that Europe should do more?
Shaquille, it should do more, but it doesn't matter what I think.
But that's all I'm saying. All I'm saying is that Europe should do more.
Well,
that's all I'm saying.
I think there is a status quo. Okay, they got $61 billion approved. They sent to Ukraine a fraction of that, $1.2 billion. So it's nothing, okay? Because all European countries for several months now, they are helping Ukraine. They're building their military machine more and more in anticipation of unpredictability of U.S. policy, especially after election or even before election, because right now it's unclear actually who making decision, Biden or Kamala Harris, and it's kind of a disarray right now at the best. So all what you can hope is that once after election, one way or another, things will get settled. But you cannot rule out isolationist.
But things will get settled based on what America does. What I'm saying is that Europe should be doing more. There is no excuse for what's happening in Ukraine. There is no excuse for it. And the whole world, regardless of the United States, the whole world should be reacting to this and pushing Russia back. Right? What the Ukrainian people are going through is unacceptable, and it shouldn't matter what the United States is doing. The rest of the world should be standing up and saying, we're not going to accept this and we're going in. And they haven't done that enough for the Ukrainian people to maintain their sovereignty, and they haven't done that enough for the Ukrainian people to be shown the kind of respect that the world should show them.
Shaquille, you are preaching to convert it. You are saying what European countries should do while they're doing exactly that for several months now.
Well, they should do more. They could do more.
They are going to do more and more and more as they will ramp up the military production, because all these weapons, they have to be produced. Because once you send weapons and they are being used in a war, they're becoming garbage in months, 2 months, depends on the weapon, 3 months, and they need new weapons. And
if Russia lost its mind and attacked Germany, what would happen? The whole world would react. All of Europe would react. And all of the things that you're saying right now, they need time to get weaponry and all the rest of it, none of that would matter. The entire world would react. If the Russian Federation was to attack Finland, the same thing. But the Russian Federation attacks the Ukraine, and the whole world sits back and goes, oh, well, we're going to try and be diplomatic. No, what has happened in the Ukraine is completely unacceptable. The Ukrainian people deserve better, and Europe should be doing more.
Shaquille, you cannot compare the Russian attack against Germany and Finland, who are members of NATO, and Ukraine, who is not. But I want to tell you something. If Russia will attack Finland or Germany, and you think that United States will jump in to help Germany or Finland, it's not the case. If Trump is the president, number one thing what he is going to do, he will check whether Germany and or Finland paid its 2% of GDP. And Trump already said, oh, you didn't?
Okay, Sasha,
Russia, go ahead and attack.
Sasha, this is not a debate about American politics. What I am saying to you, and I think you agree with me, but I'm not sure. What I'm saying to you is, it shouldn't matter what America wants to do. We are a whole world, okay? If a country is attacked, whether it be Finland that's a member of NATO or whether it be the Ukraine, if a country is attacked and it's a country whose sovereignty we believe in, we should be out there doing something about it.
Yeah,
And we should be doing something about it regardless of the political whims and fancies of the United States. All of us who live outside the United States look aghast at America. We look at the political system and we go, oh my goodness, what are you guys doing now? Like, what are you guys arguing about now? What's your political system going to do now, right? America is its own country. But what I'm saying is we are all powerful, wealthy countries. We should not be taking the lead from the United States. If we don't agree, or if the United States is showing apathy, then we should be going in and doing something about it. And at the end of the day, what we are seeing in Europe is Ukrainians fleeing the Ukraine out of fear. We're seeing young mothers taking their kids and catching trains and fleeing the Ukraine because of how scared they are, whilst Europe sits there and says, okay, we'll help a little bit, we'll give you some money, we'll give you some military, but we won't do anything too drastic unless the United States says so. The United States is a whole different continent. I think the rest of us should stand up. And I have lived in Switzerland. I'm a UK citizen. I believe that my countries have let the Ukraine down more than what the US has. And I believe that my country should stand up. Who cares what the US says? Let's go in and do something about it. And what's happened to the Ukrainian people is unacceptable, and it should be considered to be unacceptable by everybody in Europe.
Okay, Shaquille. I agree with you that what's happening right now in Ukraine is unacceptable. Nobody can argue with that. Now, speaking about NATO, the whole purpose of NATO was after Second World War to have military organization, international organization, who could withstand the possible attack of Red Army, Soviet Army, and go all the way to La Manche. And they had tens of thousands of tanks, and their military all ramped up. And essentially, I'm surprised that Stalin 2-3 years later, especially after Fulton's speech of Churchill, he didn't start all-out attack against Europe. Mind you, US had the nuclear devices, but still. So the NATO was an umbrella that United States was providing their nuclear power, nuclear possibilities to protect Europe from the possible Russian attack. And Jonathan, you're well aware of it, the doctrine of NATO and how to deal with this tanks attack of Russia and to use nuclear devices to deal with it.
Initially, NATO's approach was a form of the U.S. massive retaliation doctrine. Essentially, American forces in NATO acted as a tripwire to verify the fact of Russian aggression. That was the doctrine until 1968. Once the Soviet Union achieved strategic nuclear parity with the United States, NATO modified its doctrine to more like flexible response, basically threatening to use nuclear weapons first, reserving the right to use nuclear weapons first in the event that the Warsaw Pact invaded NATO. Now, this has become a much different situation. With the collapse of the former Warsaw Pact, of the Warsaw Pact alliance, essentially, those nations wound up joining NATO by default because they were all well aware of Russia's nuclear arsenal and of Russia's war plans and plans to use nuclear weapons against NATO in the event that war actually occurred. And that was revealed in an article in 1990 in the West German press. And most people ignored it at the time, but it is still very relevant. And I will agree with, I noticed Adam's comment that, in effect, essentially, Russia will never reconcile itself to the permanent loss of Ukraine.